I want to welcome everyone to our latest installment of CommYOUnity Quarantine, and today's guest is none other than Loyola Marymount University Athletic Director Craig Pintens. Craig, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is actually, I think, well, I've done some Instagram stuff before, but this might be the first time I've gone on Instagram Live to do an interview.
Well, I hadn't done it until probably 10 days ago, so I'm getting used to it. So let's just ride this out and see how it goes.
Great. I'm ready. I'm glad I'm not the guinea pig. That's for sure.
No, that was Ed McLaughlin. Ed was the guinea pig.
How did that do? Did that do okay?
It was great. I mean, it's interesting, Craig. I've known him for 20 plus years. In that interview, there was so much I discovered about him, and it really revealed why we're friends, because we have a lot of things in common, and maybe we'll discover that too.
Okay.
Today.
Well, good.
So first things first, man. How are you doing? How's your family doing in response to COVID-19 and the stay-at-home measures? Talk to us about your family and how everything's going there.
Sure. Well, my family, we have 4 kids, so they're doing well as they can. I think virtual learning takes on a different meaning for everybody. I think for my wife and I, it just means that seemingly summer break started a lot earlier. So I think, in close quarters, when you have 6 people in one house, there are times where we all need a little bit of a break, and that's time to go ride a bike or take a run or take a walk at that point.
Well, I'm glad everybody's healthy.
Yeah, well, we're all doing pretty well.
So along those lines, Ed, you're the athletic director at LMU. You get the news in the middle of basketball season. Well, not the middle, but you're about to start your tournament. Take me through that process, how you discovered that the season was going to be put on hold indefinitely. Talk to me about that COVID-19 response at LMU.
Sure. Well, interestingly enough, our season for basketball had actually already ended. The WCC tournament had wrapped up that Tuesday, actually, in general. However, we made a coaching change on Sunday night leading up to that Thursday. So that Thursday in particular, I actually was on a plane to parts unknown. I won't reveal where I was going because I was going to go scout a potential coach. Okay. And so as I'm in the air, that tournament obviously was canceled. And then I landed, and because everything was happening at such a rapid pace at that point, there were a lot of phone calls that took place with the WCC and with campus to try to figure out what everything meant and what our messaging would be going forward. So I just decided to stay put and operate from there rather than flying back home. So it was kind of surreal flying home that Friday, knowing that everything for the spring at that point was canceled. It was pretty crazy.
So when you got back here to Westchester, were your first meetings virtual to discuss what your game plan was moving forward, academically and athletically, or were you doing that in the air?
No, pretty much we were doing a lot of those meetings on the phone that Thursday to kind of figure out exactly what things would look like going forward. And then we had a lot of meetings that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. At that point, campus was still closed, or still open, I should say. It wasn't closed. And so we were able to meet in person with a handful of people. But that Monday morning, I think we had our first department-wide Zoom on that Monday morning. And keep in mind, during that time, we're also trying to do a search for our next head coach for men's basketball. So it was a little bit of a hectic couple weeks.
I can't imagine. I'm glad you came through it okay. I'm just really interested in learning more about you, and I want our viewers to learn more about you, the person, and how you got to this point. Now, I know you bounced around a lot from an athletic standpoint. Take me back to the beginning. Where did you grow up? What was early life like for you and your household growing up?
Sure. Well, I can't, apparently I can't keep a job. I just keep bouncing around a little bit. But no, I grew up in Wisconsin, which is where I'm from originally. Grew up about an hour north of Milwaukee, and grew up in a house where My dad was a high school basketball coach. In fact, is still a high school basketball coach this past year. And so really have been around sports kind of my whole entire life and have always loved sports. So I went to University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, basically the finest institution in the Midwest, I would argue, and went there. And about my junior year, I decided that I wanted to do something in sports. And so I wanted to be a sports agent. And my determination was the best case for me was to go to law school. So from undergrad, I went right from undergrad to law school. And from there, we had an agent come and speak to my class, my first semester of law school, and he was miserable. He hated everything about being an agent.
Really?
And I realized probably not the best speaker you want to have for a career day when you bring in somebody that hates their job. But he was good in terms of giving us a good perspective, and I decided that wasn't something I wanted to do at that point.
So you go to college and you're set on becoming an attorney so that you can become an agent. And this individual comes and speaks and completely turns you off like in real time for being an agent?
Well, yeah, I think it kind of led me to the point where I was like, I'm not sure I want to do this, because agents really operate a lot in the gray. And I say that I've got a couple friends that have been agents at various times, and they're great people, but I just didn't think it would be a good fit for me personally, professionally. And so I started to think about other things I wanted to do. And then for a while, I wanted to be a baseball GM. So I did an internship with the Beloit Snappers, a minor league baseball team, at one point. And then my third year of law school, I did an internship with Wisconsin-Whitewater, my alma mater. They had a new athletic director there at the time by the name of Sean Eichhorst. Sean went on to become the athletic director at the University of Miami, and then later at Nebraska, and then he's now at the University of Texas, kind of in a number 2 role. But observing Sean that fall was really what made me kind of fall in love with college athletics and realize that that's what I wanted to do for, I guess, the rest of my life to this point.
Well, we're gonna get back to that. I want to backtrack a little bit. You said your dad was a high school basketball coach. What are you, 6'4", 6'3", 6'4"?
I'm about 6'4", yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm shrinking though. I'm probably 6'3" now.
Okay. Well, we're getting older. We're all shrinking a little bit. So,
compressing.
So did you play basketball in grade school and high school?
I did. Growing up, I played basketball and baseball. I obviously wasn't very good. I lacked a lot of talent, lacked a lot of things. But I did know I had a love for sports in general, and which is what led me to work in college sports. I would fall into the DNP-CD, did not play coach's decision. In fact, my claim to fame in baseball really is I was all North Shore Conference scorekeeper as a junior. I was really, really strong. I kept the book in pen.
Time out. How do you make anything as a scorekeeper? I need you to explain this to us.
Self-proclaimed. I was that good. No, I was really good. In fact, probably part of the reason I didn't play, I kept the book in pen, and our coach, came to me and asked. He said, I don't know if I've ever had anybody keep the book in pen. Don't you think you should keep it in pencil? I said, you can keep it in pen if you don't make mistakes.
So, that says a lot about you, because I've done some homework on your background. You seem to be pretty meticulous and a stickler for detail. Tell me, where did that originate from?
Well, I probably am in a lot of different aspects. And then in some aspects, I probably am not, because I think it really depends on the situation. But generally, I did learn at a pretty young age from my parents, if you're going to do something, to make sure to give it your all, and also pay attention to the details. And that probably stems from both my mom and my dad. My dad, in addition to being a teacher and a coach, did construction in the summer, and I would see him spend a lot of time to get something exactly perfect. And really, his attention to detail is pretty unrivaled, and it probably hurts him. He could never operate that full time as a business because he's too slow, because he literally makes sure that everything is exactly the way he wants it.
Well, if you have the time to measure twice and cut once, it's always better than not having that kind of
Well,
time.
yeah, except I think my dad would measure 6 times and cut once.
Well, that's borderline paralysis.
Yeah, I would agree at times.
So you decide you don't want to be an agent, but yet you have this law degree. Take me through the process of you deciding that you wanted to get into athletics.
Yeah, no, well, that really happened, like I said, kind of that third year of law school, and I realized I wanted to get into college athletics. So at various points, I really had no intentions of ever practicing as an attorney. The fortunate thing in Wisconsin, you're actually automatically admitted to the bar. So I am a member of the Wisconsin bar. I pay dues. They're non-practicing dues. But my first job in college athletics, I really tried hard to get a lot of different jobs and didn't really have much opportunity. I applied for anything that was out there. And then ultimately somebody at Marquette, which is where I went to law school, they had quit in the athletic department, and they knew that I was looking for something. And so they contacted me, and it ended up working out, again, because somebody quit. And so my first job in college athletics paid $1,000 a month with no benefits. And I started on September 10th, 2001. So my second day of work was 9/11.
Wow.
Which is pretty interesting.
So what was that job in college athletics?
I was a marketing intern. So my job was to basically do a lot of different things at the games in terms of game management. I created a lot of the ads that we ran for basketball. I did the kids club, and really just trying to generate interest in any of the programs that we had at that point.
And did that stick with you? Has that been a passion of yours, marketing?
Yeah, I've been fortunate in my career that because that was my entry point into college athletics, I've always been involved up until this point on the marketing side in some way, shape, or form in every role that I've been in. And so it does cause you to probably look at things from an external focus a little bit more than most people.
Agreed. And that I know that you said you bounced around a bit. You and I have
Sure.
that in common. If you get in collegiate athletics, anyone out there watching, moving from job to job is part of the deal. I know you were at LMU, you were at Marquette, you were at University of Oregon. What toll does that take, if any, on your family when you're moving around that much? Because I went through something similar, but I'm single. I just got left.
Yeah. Well, it does take a toll. I mean, we started at the University of Texas Pan American, and actually our daughter was born there, and so that was before that. You know, obviously we didn't have any kids. We went back to Marquette. We had two of our sons were born in Milwaukee, and then from there went to LSU. And my wife was 8 months pregnant when we went to LSU, and we had our fourth child there. So we've had children in four children in three different states, and then we moved to the University of Oregon, and it does take a toll. I can remember when I told my family that we were going from LSU to Oregon. At the time, our oldest was in second grade, and our second oldest was 5, and so the 7-year-old is crying. I mean, she's upset because her whole life has changed, and I don't even know if she could at this point remember her friends from second grade, just because your perspective, right? But our son, the 5-year-old, he said, "You know what? I have a few questions." And I thought, okay, this will be interesting. And keep in mind that I take the job the Tuesday before the LSU Oregon football game. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to the University of Oregon, and I'm currently at LSU.
Right.
And so son said, "I have a few questions." I said, "Okay, well, go ahead." Said, "Number one, will I be able to get a new uniform? Because I was scheduled to get a LSU uniform. Can I get a new jersey?" "Yeah, we can probably do that. In fact, Oregon has quite a few. You'll be able to choose your color and everything. It'd be great." Right. So that was number one. Number two, he said, "Will I be able to go to the press box at a baseball game? Because at LSU I was able to do it." And I said, "Well, look, I can't guarantee that, but I'm guessing Oregon baseball isn't quite as big as LSU baseball. We can probably get that arranged. We can probably figure that out. And then number three, and he got a little bit emotional, and he said, who am I supposed to root for on Saturday? And I said, well, you know, Jack, you can root for whoever you want. Who do you want to root for? And he said, well, I want to root for LSU, but I know I'm probably supposed to root for Oregon. And, you know, that I use that as a story because when you work in college athletics, it's not really a job, it's a lifestyle.
Right.
And so your family becomes a big part of wherever you are. And currently, you know, at LMU, three of our kids love to come to campus and shoot around and come to games. And our fourth does when she's able to, but she's a little bit busier. So it really becomes part of your life more so than just a job.
So what's this 5-year-old doing now, Craig? I mean, for him to ask those questions of you at 5 years old, has he become some sort of savant at this point?
No, I wish he would do more homework. In fact, he was tuned in a little earlier. So, Jack, if you're still there, you probably need to do your homework before you start playing video games. But Jack is in 8th grade currently, and he's pretty tall. He's about 6'4" himself at this point. So
Wow.
He'll be ready to go into high school next year. So they grow up pretty quick.
We're joined by LMU Athletics Director Craig Pintens. Craig, you've had a number of stops, and I want to ask you some questions about a couple of them.
Sure.
You're at University of Texas Pan American. Truth be told, I've never heard of that school until I started doing research on you. I read where you negotiated a Spanish radio broadcast.
Yeah. So it was interesting. For those that don't know, Texas Pan American, which is the university formerly known as UTPA, is now University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. And UTRGV is located in Edinburgh, Texas. It's about 10 minutes from Mexico. And so when I was there, we negotiated a Spanish-only broadcast of our baseball games with one of the local radio stations because the other stations weren't able to give us airtime. So we figured, all right, we'll try the Spanish-speaking station. And so we had a couple students that were able to do play-by-play in Spanish, and we put it on the Spanish channel. And you know, I don't know what the viewership was, but it was something fun and something a little bit different that you wouldn't have an opportunity to do everywhere.
So you had students calling the games on the radio.
Oh yeah. No, we were. I mean, we had any students that we could find for any job we would take because we just didn't have a very big budget. In fact, the operating budget for marketing there was $28,000 a year. And I remember that specifically because it was about $500 more than my salary, which was $27,500. And so it was pretty fun. But the great thing about that was about 15,000 of that 28 was our PA announcer. And so anytime the PA announcer couldn't make it to a game, I would sub because that meant it was $50 back into our budget. And so, you know, I would kind of root for him to not be there at times so that we could have, you know, 50, or if it was a doubleheader in baseball, $100 to play with.
So how large was that school? It doesn't sound like it was
big,
big.
Very big.
Really?
Texas Pan American at the time was one of the largest Hispanic serving institutions in the country. When I was there, we were close to an enrollment of 30,000 students. And I think the plan, and I haven't checked the numbers, but the plan was to grow it even more. So it is actually a rather large school.
Big school with a $28,000 marketing budget for athletics total, right?
We had $1 for every student. That was pretty much it. And I don't know if that's how it was determined or not, but it was fun.
So I also see that you've been the president of the National Association of Collegiate Marketing Administrators. How did that come about?
Well, you know, very early in my career, I got involved in NACMA, is the shorthand abbreviation for it, and just had opportunities, you know, where they had invited me to speak and got to learn a lot about myself and about other people by going to the convention. And at one point, I think when I was at Marquette, they asked me to be on the board of directors of that group and organization. And from there, you know, they have a nomination process to become president. And at one point, you basically serve in kind of on the executive board of that group and then become the president. So I can't remember exactly what year I was president, but I was president, I believe, when I was at the University of Oregon.
Right. And so what's the overall objective of that organization when you were president? What were your main objectives?
Just keep everything afloat. I didn't want to do anything that would damage the organization. But no, I think, NACMA is such an important, and all professional organizations, no matter what field of work that you're in, are really important to learning more about your own industry, learning about yourself, and learning about best practices at other institutions. And so for me, I learned a lot. And I think what you have to do, and I learned a lot even when I was at Texas Pan American, because you'd go to a convention and you hear an idea that Ohio State was doing, or Texas. And certainly when you're at a place like Texas Pan American, you don't have the same kind of budget, clearly, as those other two schools. But what can you do to modify that idea and make it your own with what you are able to do? And I think that those lessons have carried on throughout my career, and no matter where I've been, and I owe a lot of that to NACMA for giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's important to share with folks that college athletics is not very glamorous at times, and a lot of times you're working with less and expected to do more. And it seems like you've been pretty successful at doing that in your career. You've been at some very reputable and well-known universities, one of them being University of Oregon, where you played a pivotal role in creating a unique digital and social presence for the University of Oregon. Share a little bit about how you brought that about, and talk a little bit about Oregon from a marketing standpoint. All of the changing of uniforms that they do from week to week, I think it's genius.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be able to work at the University of Oregon, because from a pure marketing standpoint, it's the pinnacle. There's not a better place to work in the country from a marketing and branding standpoint, because we obviously paid a lot of attention to that. And obviously Nike has a lot to do with that, with the uniforms. And so it was a great place to work and to learn. And the thing that differentiates Oregon from everybody else is Oregon is innovative, and they're always looking for change. They're always looking for what is next. They're never status quo. And that is a really exciting place to work, because that brand permeates the entire athletic department. It wasn't just the brand itself. It really was the way that you approached everything. And so you always looked for the most innovative way to do things. And I loved my time at Oregon, because it was a great place to really explore and try things, because Oregon has that reputation. And the beauty of that is, when you did something at the University of Oregon, even if it was subpar or just average, it got way more attention than it should have. Now, the flip side of that is, when something bad happened at the University of Oregon, it probably got more attention than it should have. So it's great working at a place like that, but and it definitely provided some great lessons for me going forward.
Shout out to Shelly Smith. Her daughter Dylan went to University of Oregon. She played soccer there.
Yep.
I have an affection for that university because of that. I've never been there, but I like Oregon because Dylan went and played soccer there.
Yeah, well, and Shelly does a great
spot.
job of, yeah, they do a great job of representing the university, and certainly has been a great friend to the University of Oregon as a result of that association.
So you've been at some great schools. You're now at LMU. You oversee 19 sports. You're not involved with football anymore because LMU doesn't have a football program. Do you miss football?
Not right now. Trying to figure out if we're going to play in the fall. No, not at all. No, football is different. It obviously becomes the lifeblood of your department when you're at a place with football. And I was fortunate to see it at the very highest level at LSU and Oregon, two places that have a great reputation. And really, with the exception of 1 year, every year that I was at either of those schools, we were in the conversation for the national championship. And that's a really, really unique place to be. with that being said, when you are at a school that doesn't have football, and I've been actually at 3 schools now that don't have football, it really is a different perspective. And so really your premier sport becomes men's basketball and women's basketball.
Right.
And that becomes the focus, and that becomes your football, because that is your opportunity to generate some revenue.
Absolutely. So the things that you learned and you gleaned from your experiences at Marquette, LSU, Oregon, it seems like it set you up nicely for when you finally became the athletic director at LMU. Tell me some of the things that some of the most prominent things that you took with you from an LSU, from Oregon to LMU, and how are you implementing some of those lessons learned into, for example, your marketing strategy and how you oversee the entire athletic department?
Well, I think the most important thing is when you get into the role of becoming an athletic director, you really have to understand that you don't know everything, and you have to rely on a lot of other people for help. And so it was great to be at a place like the University of Oregon or LSU or Marquette or Texas Pan American, and certainly learned something along each one of those stops. But if you really think that you know everything at that point, or you're going to be able to just navigate through that, you're sadly mistaken, because there's a lot of things that you don't know. And so you better ask for a lot of help and rely on the people around you to make an impact. So that was probably the thing. I tried to come in with an open mind, and I think I did learn at some other places, because came from a place where University of Oregon, where Rob Mullins, I think, is one of the best athletic directors in the country. And Rob did a really good job of relying on the people around him to help make an impact on the department.
I'm glad you brought up Rob Mullins. Craig, who are the athletic directors around the country that you communicate with most, and why? It's number one. And number two, of those folks inside of college athletics, who has served as role models for you? And they don't have to be in athletics. It could be outside of athletics, but tell us about that.
Well, I think when you're in a conference, you end up talking to a lot of people within your conference first and foremost, because a lot of times they're dealing with similar things to you, or from a conference perspective, decisions that are made in the conference provides an opportunity to be to have gossip with each other about what's happening in the conference. So I think first and foremost, I probably talk to the ADs in our conference more than anyone. But from there, from a mentor role model standpoint, certainly, when faced with something that I don't know or I need help with, Rob Mullins, like you said, he's a phone call away, which is great, and to rely on his expertise is very helpful. Sean Eichhorst, I mentioned earlier, he's somebody who, whenever I've had any type of serious decision in my career, whether it was related to me or something I'm dealing with, I always call Sean, and he's always been great at walking me through anything. And then there's people that you rely on as well, that I've got a couple other peers that necessarily aren't athletic directors that I kind of reach out to and walk through situations. And then there's somebody outside college athletics, a donor at the University of Oregon who I met along the way, who is kind of like a serial entrepreneur slash CEO, and he's had a lot of different roles. And so from a leadership standpoint, when I'm stuck on a personnel decision or something related to the running of an organization, he's somebody I can rely on. And he doesn't always understand exactly everything with college athletics, but that perspective is very, very important, because a lot of times we rely too often on what is happening at another school, and it's not one size fits all. So I like his perspective because he comes from outside college athletics.
So these folks have helped you create a formula in your mind, I'm just guessing, on what characteristics you're looking for when you're seeking a new head coach in any sport. What characteristics are you, in particular, are you most looking for when you're looking to hire a new coach?
Well, I think it really depends on where you're at in that particular sport and what you're actually looking for in that particular sport. But above all, you need passion, and you need somebody that can recruit, because recruiting is such an important aspect of coaching. It's way different than professional athletics, where you don't get to be you don't shop for the groceries and also become the chef. You do get an opportunity to do that in college athletics. And so talent acquisition in the form of recruiting is really important. And so any coach that we're looking for, and we've hired 4 head coaches here since I've been here, they're all extremely strong recruiters, first and foremost. That's probably the one characteristic they all have in common. But beyond that, it really depends on what you're looking for at that particular time in that particular program. And, for us in men's basketball, we're very fortunate to have hired Stan Johnson, who I think is going to make a huge impact here, and already has made a huge impact despite his home office being in Mequon, Wisconsin right now. He's done an amazing job, because what we really needed is somebody who had what we talked about earlier, an attention to detail for every aspect of the program, and somebody who was going to be able to recruit at an extremely high level. And those are 2 characteristics for Stan that stood out when we were going through the process.
It's refreshing to hear you say that, Craig. Not enough people that I've heard will start with recruitment powers as it relates to hiring a coach and how successful they think that coach may be. I appreciate you sharing that, because we don't hear that enough. We hear about other things regarding some of the characteristics that coaches have, but you started with the ability to recruit.
Well, yeah, and I think, there's some non-negotiables that come before that, which that's kind of AD speak, integrity. Right. They need to be, above board, committed to academics. I mean, those are all, I think those are all things that I would hope everybody is looking for if you're hiring anybody in college athletics. But, I think those are kind of a given. So what is the differentiator above kind of the requirements? And to me, for us and for our coaches, it's definitely recruiting, because we're in the hotbed here for any given sport. You can walk outside your door and probably walk, not drive, because although traffic right now is great, but
Isn't it beautiful?
It's amazing. It's amazing. But if you go within an hour radius of campus, you could pretty much fill out any roster that you have.
Wow. I did not know that. And I did want to share this with our viewers who didn't know. Loyola Marymount University is a Jesuit school. I don't know if that played any role in you taking a job, although I believe Marquette is as well, correct?
Yeah, it is. And it did play a big role in attracting me to this position, because when I was first contacted about it, I said, I'm good. I'm fine where I am, happy at University of Oregon. I'll wait till something different comes along. And the person who was doing the search said, well, just do me a favor. You're going to be in LA anyway. Just drop by campus, visit it, and then call me on Monday. That was on a Sunday. And so I did. I visited campus, and blew me away. And so then I started to think a little bit, and I called my wife that night. I said, campus is actually pretty nice. And she said, well, you always enjoyed working at Marquette because it is a Jesuit school. And it's hard to explain to anybody, but Jesuit education really is about developing the whole person. Cura personalis. It's a Latin term for developing the whole person, and developing somebody's mind, body, and spirit. And if you think about college athletics, really what we're here to do is to develop somebody's mind, body, and spirit. So the thought process of a Jesuit education dovetails very nicely with college athletics. And so for me, it was a natural fit. I loved working at Marquette, and obviously love working here at the university, at LMU. I almost call it university something else. I don't know. I've worked too many different places. We've talked about all those other places. I almost called it something else.
So you've been at LMU since 2018, and we'll get into a little bit of the history of LMU and what you all have going on now, a special project that you have going on now. But what has Lion life been like for you?
It's been great. We have a lot of opportunity here to really do something special. We're the number 64 ranked institution in the U.S. News and World Report. So we have built-in advantages that other schools don't have. We have a tremendous location. The weather is unrivaled because we're about 1.5 miles from the beach, so you have a nice breeze off the ocean all the time. It doesn't really get hotter than 90. It's unbelievable. Campus is beautiful. We have some great programs. What we don't have, and where we need to make the biggest advancement, is in our athletic facilities. And if we're able to do that, we have a commitment from our president to become great. When we have our facilities where they need to be, it's going to be tough to beat us.
So I'm glad you said that, Craig, because I know that a primary role of a typical athletic director, especially at your level, is fundraising. And what is that process like? It's a little bit like recruiting, I would imagine.
It's a lot like recruiting. You know what, the main thing with fundraising is you just need to treat people right. Develop relationships with them, because if you don't have a relationship with somebody, it's very difficult to ask them to help support you or support whatever cause you might have. So really it begins and ends with developing relationships with people, and then from there, raising as much money as you can. And really what fundraising, the best type of fundraising is when somebody's passion matches what your needs are. And so what I mean by that is, if somebody is very passionate about the academics of student athletes, well, we happen to need a new academic center. So if there is anybody who's watching, feel free to contact me and we'll figure this out. But if they have a passion for that, that would be a natural fit for them. If they're passionate about our men's basketball program, that would be a natural fit because we have some needs in men's basketball. So if you can match somebody's passion with your needs, you're going to accomplish a lot.
I'm sure you'll get the job done, Craig, as meticulous as you are. Speaking of passion, there's a special project that the university is in the midst of executing as it relates to Hank Gathers. For those who don't know, the only reason I knew about LMU, and we had this conversation in your office, is because of the run that the school went on when Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball were student athletes at LMU. Hank Gathers tragically died. There was a lot of, shall we say, turmoil around that death as it relates to the school and his family. Share with our viewers, if you can, what's unfolding in Hank's memory.
Sure. So we were able to have a statue unveiled on February 29th this past year, right before everything got crazy. Boy, that seems like 7 years ago, but it wasn't.
You got that in just in time.
We did. Yeah, we did. So we had a great celebration. It was his 30th anniversary. And, when I first started here, it was something that I asked around to a lot of people of how do we recognize Hank? And we had done a few things. We did something in the gym, and then we had a bench, but didn't feel like it was significant enough. And so contacted the family. We got permission from the family to do a statue in Hank's honor. And then we were able to fundraise for it. And, we worked with the sculptor. And luckily, we unveiled that on February 29th, and it was a great day. And the reason it was so fun for me to kind of sit back and watch was to watch the team get together. And we had everybody back from that team except for one player, and the coaches were all there.
Wow.
And for them to be back and be so touched by us doing something for their fallen teammate, Hank, was really special and something that I'll never forget.
Especially so many years later, Craig.
It was great.
Come back.
It was great to have him back and to have the family here. And I've gotten to know the family well. Hank's mom, Lucille, she's awesome. Derek, brother, and the whole family was here. His other two brothers were able to make it as well as Hank's son. Hank did have a son. Everybody was here, and it was just a great day and a great remembrance of probably LMU's greatest moment and really one of the greatest moments in sports history.
Absolutely. We're joined by LMU Athletics Director Craig Pintens. Craig, no doubt in my mind that if Hank would have continued to play, he would have went into the NBA. Bo went to the NBA. You've come from a number of different schools, Oregon, LSU, that had a number of countless football and basketball players go on to play professionally. As a leader in college athletics, where are you at on compensating or not compensating athletes? Because we know how much money they generate for the NCAA and the member institutions. Where are you at with that?
Well, I'm very thankful that the name, image, likeness, we're making some progress on that. I think that that's long overdue. You know, to me, growing up on the marketing side and licensing side of college athletics, it is something that was actually frustrating at times because there were so many restrictions on what you were not able to do to even promote your own student athletes. So it's a great step forward. I think that hopefully student athletes will be able to benefit from it. You know, as far as pay for play, that's an entirely different discussion than name, image, likeness. And so in that regard, you know, I do think there in a lot of sports there are professional opportunities, and if a student athlete wants to do that, they can definitely do that. But to me, the special thing about college athletics is that they are our students and that they're able to get an education. And I think what often gets lost in a lot of the pay for play discussions is all the student athletes who are graduating and going on to become pro in something other than their particular sport. Because you're right, 98% of student athletes go pro in something other than their sport. And we're very fortunate here at LMU, where we have the second highest graduation success rate in the state of California, behind only Stanford. We're above 94%. And so our student athletes are going on to make a difference in the world. And the value of an LMU education is extremely, extremely valuable. And so we're very fortunate to be in that situation. But it is a topic that is obviously gets a lot of attention. And it gets a lot of attention for football and men's basketball. And on some level, I'm happy that name, image, and likeness can kind of fill in that gap and hopefully become, in some cases, lucrative for some of the student athletes.
I think that they have to reach some level of, I don't want to use the word fair, but we're at a point where we know the books are open. We know how much money is being generated by those top tier sports, and we've got to reach a happy medium somewhere. I do agree with you, and I interviewed Clark Kellogg last week. You and he are on the same page as it relates to, you know, if you want to get paid to play, you don't have to go to college.
Yep.
And when he put it that bluntly, I had to agree with him right away. There are other choices that you can make aside from going to a 4-year school if you want to get paid to play your sport. So I'm right there with you. I want to give our viewers an opportunity to pose some questions to Craig during our remaining time. But in the meantime, and I'll be keeping track of the questions that they ask as it pops up on the screen. Craig, you and I met because I approached you about the work that we do in the community to improve law enforcement community relations. There's a number of other organizations and efforts in Los Angeles County where people are doing what they can to improve some area of society. What are programs near and dear to your heart, not just as the athletic director at LMU, but Craig Pintens personally? What are some of the organizations that you're involved with that you believe in?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, and I think your organization is near the top because it really does make an impact in terms of people understanding what law enforcement goes through and breaking down some of those misconceptions that people in the community and or law enforcement might have about each other. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing. But as far as me personally, I've always been one organization that we worked with at the University of Oregon that is near and dear to me is an organization called Courts for Kids. And what they do is they go to third world countries and build basketball courts for a country and it becomes a rallying point. I was fortunate enough at the University of Oregon to go on one of those trips to the Dominican Republic, and we built the basketball court, and it was really special. And so I really think highly of Courts for Kids. They're based out of Portland. They do work all over the United States and all over the world, really. And so very thankful for being affiliated with them. But there's a lot of great causes out there. And that's the hard part about working in athletics is you get approached by a lot of different people. And everybody has an idea of how they can associate with you to further their organization. And so it does become tough at times to try to align yourself with the right people.
Well, we're very thankful that you got involved with Game Changer, first on a personal level by participating. And, you know, as fate would have it, our last Game Changer event that we did was with you. After that event, March was completely shut down. But I do want to share with you what we're doing now. We're looking to take Game Changer online, and we can talk a little bit more about this offline. But,
sure.
You know, everything's moving virtual, and I had no idea that the LA Lakers have a gaming team, and I'll be making an announcement about that next week. But my personal experience, you know, I live very close to the campus, and I can say from a personal perspective that LMU is a fantastic institution. Athletics is great. Going to a game was a treat for us. Seeing your facilities, you know, your predecessors have done a great job. And, you know, you have your work cut out for you to maintain that level of excellence because it is a beautiful campus, Craig. What are some of the goals that you have for the athletic department during the time that you're going to remain at LMU?
Well, hopefully they'll have me for a long time, first and foremost. So I hope that's the case. But one of the things that we want to do, you know, our 4 pillars of our athletic department are recruit, teach, win, and graduate. And so we obviously want to recruit the very best student athletes that we can to LMU. We want to teach them while we're here. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but really develop their mind, body, and spirit while they're here. And we want to win. We want to compete for championships. We have that opportunity here. We've got some great coaches. We have a commitment from a president who is dedicated to our success. And so we have an opportunity to win at a really high level and then graduate. You know, that's the ultimate goal of a college athlete, because really when you choose an institution, you're choosing it for 40 years, not just 4 years. So it's a 40-year decision. And so we're very fortunate to graduate our student athletes at a very high level. And so ultimately those are the 4 goals, and that's what everything revolves around. As far as what do we want to get done, there's a lot. I mean, take your pick. I mean, we want to get better in every single sport that we possibly can. We obviously want to get better facilities, because all those things I talked about, recruit, teach, win, and graduate, they're all dependent on funding and making sure that we can provide the very best for our student athletes so that they can compete at the highest level.
Now, with your student athletes, I'm not sure how many student athletes you have within those 19 sports, but one of the things I've been pretty amazed at is today's student athlete and how they are involved in the community away from their sport. Share with us some of the events that you've attended with various sports where they are taking time away from their sport to give back to the community here in Los Angeles County.
Sure. Well, a lot of our teams are very active in community service. And one of the things that happens on LMU's campus annually is the LMU Special Games, which is kind of very similar to the Special Olympics, but it's a separate organization, and it happens every spring. And so a lot of our student athletes are heavily involved with that. The great thing about working in a Jesuit institution is community service is really a part of everything that you do, because you want to become individuals for others. That's ultimately the goal of a Jesuit education. And so our teams really take that to heart. So they do a lot of work with food banks. They do a lot of work with the homeless population. They do a lot of things on campus, but they also do a lot of things that we just don't publicize because we're not in it for that reason. And so a lot of our teams are constantly out there making an impact in the community and really not doing it for the photo opportunity, but more so doing it because it's the right thing to do.
And I know in the state of California, in a lot of high schools, the students cannot graduate from that high school unless they have performed a certain number of community service hours. I don't know if something like that it exists at LMU, but you know, from my background and what I do for a living, I would love to see that be some sort of requirement on the 4-year institution level, where you can't graduate unless you're giving back in some way, shape, or form. And I'll say this. I feel like students are performing more community service now for whatever reason. I could be wrong, but I feel like they're out in the community doing more now than they were when I was in school, when I was in college in the 1980s. Kids seem to be much more active and wanting to be a part of something important. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I would say that that's probably generally pretty true. I think students today are much more aware of the world around them and the impact that they can make. And I think a lot of that has to do with being digital natives. They're more aware of some of the issues that are bigger than them. And so I think as a result of that, you see a lot of students who do get involved with a lot of causes. And again, very fortunate to be at a place like LMU where that gets pushed to the forefront.
Absolutely. Craig, where can our viewers go to get updates on what's the latest with LMU athletics?
Sure. Well, you can always go to lmulions.com. You can follow us in all of our social channels. It's typically LMU Lions. But if you just want information on LMU, go to lmu.edu. Have a great website that really doesn't do justice to the beauty that is on this campus.
Craig, thanks so much for joining us on Community Quarantine. I can't tell you what a treat this was for me, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Well, thank you, Sean. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you providing some content for people out there. And for those that just stumbled on this, make sure to check out Sean's website as well, because he's doing great work in the community and making a big impact in LA. So thank you, Sean.
Much appreciated, Craig. You take care and be safe.
All right. Thanks.
Take
Bye.
care.